Joining our conversation now, some of our most favorite reporters and friends. John Heilman's here, NBC News and MSNBC national affairs analyst, host, and executive producer of Showtime's The Circus, and host of the Hell and High Water podcast from the Recount. No, he doesn't sleep. Also joining us, Washington Post contributing columnist, former Congresswoman Donna Edwards is back, and Jason Johnson, journalism and politics professor at Morgan State University and a contributor to the Griots here. And of course, Tim Miller's back, former RNC spokesman and contributor to The Bulwark. John Heilman, I start with you, my friend.
Hi, Nicole. Do you have a question? Or can I
well, as always, you know, we were texting, and just pick up on what Garrett and I were talking about. They are now contorting themselves, which if you work on campaigns,
right.
Once people are contorting themselves to not so brutally be hypocritical, you know, as in contradicting a position they had 12 hours ago, you know that the Democratic House impeachment managers have left a mark.
Yeah, I think they've obviously left a mark, Nicole, and I think, you know, last night after the first day of the trial of the prosecution case, I was up on Capitol Hill and talking to some people, including a Democratic senator who is someone who has worked with Republicans a lot over the years, and this person said to me that the big revelation to him of the day, the two big revelations. The first was something that you were talking about with Jackie Spear before, which was. Even a month later, this senator said he did not realize until yesterday just how close he came to being in harm's way until yesterday, seeing that video. And that had shaken him and he was, you know, like a lot of senators yesterday, was kind of out of sorts emotionally. But the second thing was, he said, I never really doubted that there was an insurrection or that Donald Trump incited it. But what I realize now is that this insurrection is still ongoing. The insurrection didn't end on January 6th. Not only it's the case that the prosecution has made, which is that, you know, the insurrection started earlier than January 6th. This senator was saying, you know, we are still watching Donald Trump enact an insurrection. He is still exerting his power over my Republican colleagues. He's still, they are still cowering before him. They are, he has still not accepted Joe Biden as the legitimate president of the United States. And that with that, the gross kind of complicity that we're seeing between Donald Trump and his longtime enablers, either active enablers or passive enablers, those Republican senators who are not willing to acknowledge the reality of what they're being presented with here, the insurrection is still ongoing. And that goes directly to the arguments that were being made today about the ongoing threat of Donald Trump. If the insurrection is still here and still with us and not a one-day thing, it speaks directly to what the stakes are in this trial. And it struck me all day listening to the prosecution today how important it is to understand that.
Well, and to your point, I mean, Donna Edwards, today I saw a poll that's had 66% of Republicans today, whatever we're in, February 10th, 9th, 10th, 30th. I know there aren't 30 days in February. I've just been here a long time. But we still have 66% of all Republicans in this country. That represents millions of Americans who believe the big lie. So regardless of what Republicans do this week in terms of voting to convict and bar from future office Donald Trump, they have not done anything, with very few exceptions, to beat back the big lie that is the belief of the violent extremists who threaten us at least through the end of April.
Well, I mean, Nicole, and I think that if they don't acquit, which we expect that they will not, that means that they will continue to sign on to that lie. And, you know, Donald Trump really has, he's never acknowledged that Joe Biden has won the presidency, and he continues to perpetrate that lie. But if you look at what the impeachment managers did today, I thought it was really important for them to demonstrate that the threat is ongoing, that it's a national security threat, that it's ongoing. And that is the reason that we have to remove not only to have the option, the opportunity to say to this president, you can never serve in public office again, because otherwise, to Ted Lieu's point, he will do it again. And the fear is that he will lose again and he will do this exact same thing. So today was a really important day to thread that needle.
Well, and Jason Johnson, that part of the case was made by Diana DeGette, and she had the bulletin from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and then she had the statements, which were just chilling, of the extremists themselves in their own words, saying out loud exactly the kinds of things that led them to the Capitol. And then you have the direct line. You have all the statements from the president. It seems that the linkage has been proven over and over and over again.
Yeah, Nicole, I actually, in addition to sort of watching today's hearings on my own, I had my class watch because I was like, all right, let me show this to a bunch of 19 to 22-year-olds and get their feedback. My students, you know, they're college kids. They're not necessarily informed. And I was drawing the sort of linkages between not just what Trump has said, but the proximity of what he said to what people did. And that's what I think was actually the most crucial thing about today. Donald Trump has said crazy things for years. There have been extremists supporting him for years, but you cannot disentangle the fact that he said these things on this specific day, at this specific time, and as Congressman Nagu said at the end, he knew what he was saying, he knew what people were likely to do, and he had every reason to believe that they would respond to what he was saying with violence. And so the way I look at it is not only was today obviously a good summation and made a great deal of sense, but today was the most critical day of all from the standpoint of showing you cannot separate this, as Republicans often like to do, and say, hey, he's always been this crazy guy, from what happens. And I said to my class, I was like, look, you know, if I was talking about a discriminatory business and I was like, hey, we should shut that business down, and I've been saying that for 10 years, it doesn't matter. But if at 10 o'clock at night I say, you know what, that business closes at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we should light them up, and tomorrow that business is burned, you can catch me for incitement. And I think that's what was really made clear today with the conclusions with Neguse and Raskin.
And Tim, there's no question, because we rolled the tape of what Donald Trump envisioned. He told them to fight. He said he would go with them. There's no question anymore. It's been proven, as I said, over and over again, what the insurrectionists heard. And there's no question that every Republican ally of Donald Trump that was watching in real time knew that Donald Trump caused it and Donald Trump could stop it. Let me show you how the House impeachment managers used that Republican sound.
Pretty simple. The president caused this protest to occur. He's the only one who can make it stop. What the president said is not good enough. The president has to come out and tell his supporters to leave the Capitol grounds and to allow the Congress to do their business peacefully. And anything short of that is an abrogation of his responsibility.
Mr. President, you have got to stop this. You are the only person who can call this off. Call it off.
I mean, this is insane. I mean, I've not seen anything like this since I deployed to Iraq in 2007 and 2008. I mean, this is America, and this is what's happening right now. The president needs to call it off. Like, call it off. Call it off.
My kids didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. U.S. demands the truth.
Tim, obviously that last clip is an insurrectionist reading Donald Trump's tweet, which he tweeted after learning that the vice president's life was in danger and he was rushed out of the Capitol. We now know from the video presentations that the insurrectionists were nearing him and were probably minutes away from where he was taking shelter that day.
Yeah, I got to say, Nicole, watching that now for the third time, my blood pressure is spiking, and it fills me with rage. And it fills me with rage that it happened in our Capitol. But the reason that I'm so angry today is because this is such a clear, open and shut case. If Donald Trump had just done what every president before him who had lost an election had done and acknowledged his successor's victory, Brian Sicknick would be alive today. All of these Republicans know it. And then to sit there and watch Chris Christie and Mike Gallagher admit that it was only Donald Trump that could have called off these perpetrators. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is egging on the perpetrators that killed the police officer and injured others. And yet, has Christie made a clear statement about convicting Donald Trump? Not that I've seen. Maybe. I know for a fact that Mike Gallagher didn't vote to impeach him. You know why? Because Mike Gallagher wants to run for Senate or run for governor in Wisconsin, and he's worried about a primary. So Mike Gallagher, who admitted on January 6th that it was only Donald Trump that could stop these perpetrators from killing police officers and sieging the Capitol, still decided that in the end, he's okay with it as long as it allows his political career to move forward. It's so maddening. Neguse and Raskin did such a fantastic job. Yeah. It is such an open and shut case. There's no nuance. There's nothing worth debating. I doubt that the president's team will even try to debate on the merits tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And yet it's frustrating because we know that justice isn't going to be done.
You know, John Hallman, I'm going to let Tim channel my rage, and I just want to ask this as a cold political calculation. So the Republicans are all in with insurrections. I mean, they've taken on so much water and servitude to Donald Trump, and there are only two things. They either are okay with it or they agree with it. And in light of the reporting in the New York Times that a half a dozen House members have ties to the right-wing militia groups that are getting charged in buckets full by the day. There are new charges coming in from the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. What is this Republican Party if they are not for holding accountable he who incites an insurrection against them?
Well, I think they are some of both that you just described, Nicole. And I think some of them are not just okay with it, but approve of it. I think that's the smaller portion, but maybe there are a lot more of them than we would like to think. And then there's a whole bunch of the rest who are, as you put it, okay with it, which is really just a way of saying they'll tolerate it, they'll accept it, they'll endorse it because they're too cowardly to do anything else, or they're too calculating and ambitious, to Tim's point about what they're trying to preserve. They care only about their political futures and how they perceive it. But I'll tell you what else they are. In addition to being cowardly or being actual autocrats on the side of the insurrection, in addition to that, they're idiots. Because the reality is that if they learned nothing else from yesterday, is that loyalty to Donald Trump is of no use to you whatsoever. What happened yesterday, as we saw vividly, and I think this is another thing that many of the senators clocked yesterday, watching how close they came to Mike Pence in this video, is that there has never been a human being on earth more loyal to Donald Trump than Mike Pence. Yeah. And what he got in repayment for being that loyal to Donald Trump for 4+ years was Donald Trump tried to feed him to the lions. He sat there on that day when he could see clearly he's on the phone with Tommy Tuberville. Tommy Tuberville is saying they just rushed the vice president out of here with his family, and Donald Trump put out a tweet further inciting the rioters. He was happy, perfectly content to see his vice president, his devoted, pathetic, totally loyal vice president, killed on that day. He is the textbook definition of a monster. I mean, a monster. If you think about that through that prism, it makes vivid just the degree of Donald Trump's monstrousness and moral depravity. But it also makes clear that all these Republicans who will now try to be loyal to Donald Trump because they think that's the way their political futures will go, because they think, what, Donald Trump's going to repay them how? Donald Trump would throw any of them to the mob if he thought it was in his interest. He would let any of them be killed. I mean, literally, if he would let Mike Pence be killed, and in fact, not just let it happen, but stoke it, encourage it, the killing of his vice president. Who of these Republicans is ever going to get repaid by Donald Trump in any way politically that they can count on in the future? So they are craven and they are morally bankrupt. They are zombies at this point. They exist as a party, but they have no moral, ideological, political conviction whatsoever. They're all that, but they're also morons, every single one of them.
I only laugh because you called them idiots, things that I wish I could say and can't. I don't want to gloss over this point, though, so just bear with me. What you're saying, John Hallman, was entered into evidence by Stacey Plaskett yesterday in what was, for all of these impeachment managers, they were the precision, the toggling between emotion and cold, hard facts, the video evidence. But when she, and we'll look for it, I didn't request this ahead of time, but when she made the point you just made, that the mob was trying to assassinate the vice president, and then showed that video. Can we put it up again? I worked for a president. I traveled with the president and Secret Service. It's incredible to see Secret Service rushing a president or a vice president to safety. You just never see that. And if you watch this video, so they go ahead of him, they're rushing him. See, with his hand, he's snapping to rush them down the stairs. The vice president's there. He looks over his shoulder, talking into his sleeve is another agent with his hand on his back. His family went ahead of him. You never see that. I've traveled with the president for 6 years. We were never evacuated from any site, frankly, and that's traveling overseas as well. But I cannot imagine being evacuated because a person I worked for's life was put in danger by their boss. The vice president, this whole scene, this evacuation is because of Donald Trump. And I think if you look at this case, and it is, as Tim Miller says, open and shut. Incitement was the point. If you asked Donald Trump, and he didn't know he was going to get impeached for it, did you intend to incite a riot? He would have said, damn right I did. I mean, Howman, what are they standing on? If Donald Trump is ever interviewed and asked, did you intend for this scene at the Capitol, he would absolutely say, of course I did.
Well, I don't know, Nicole, what he would say because he's a pathological liar. He lies about everything, so I don't know what would come out of his mouth. I know for a fact that Donald Trump, wanted to see a cop killed. I can't live inside his head. I don't want to live inside his head.
But he wanted them there. He wanted the vote stopped.
100%. Oh, 100%. They made the argument today, and our friend Joe Scarborough made I thought a brilliantly concise point this morning on Morning Joe, drawing on his legal expertise, and he pulled this thing out of torts, which is called the but-for test. The but-for test is a test that basically says it's used in negligence cases. And it says, if you take somebody out of a story, would the thing happen? And if you take the person out and the thing wouldn't happen, then that person is responsible for it, right? So the but-for test applied to Trump is take Trump out of this picture and try to imagine, would any of this have happened without Trump? I'm not even talking about, Tim talked about the big lie. I'm talking about the whole of it, right? If Donald Trump didn't exist, he's the car who causes the 6-car pileup. You take that car out of the picture, the pileup doesn't happen, that car is responsible. In this case, anybody just using common sense thinks about this. If Donald Trump didn't exist, none of this would have happened. Now, all of this is contingent totally on Donald Trump. And I think there's absolutely no question, given the history. And I'm talking about a history of violence and encouraging violence, which I saw at Trump rallies in 2016 and 2015. It goes back further than that. It goes back to trying to execute the members of the Central Park Five. Donald Trump has had bloodlust for his entire public career. And he's gotten away with it for years and years. And he knows exactly what his fans were liable to do. And you look at the history of the tweets they laid out and the public statements in these last couple months, he was 1,000% conscious of wanting to get his supporters to rapidly arrive in Washington, D.C. on the 6th and go to the Capitol to disrupt those proceedings. There's zero doubt about it. And the evidence, this is one of the things the House managers made so clear. You look at the wealth of the evidence, and then you look at the common sense understanding of the whole thing, the but-for test on both cases, in the detail and from 30,000 feet. The guy is guilty. As guilty as could be. It's not an open and shut case. You shouldn't even bother to have to open this case. It's been shut from the very first day.
And to the point of what he wanted, that was such a heavy emphasis of the impeachment managers, that conduct that before the trial we really only saw described in news accounts. The Washington Post, Ashley Parker writing that he was riveted, like he was watching television. It was hard to get him to take calls from his allies who were calling, people like Lindsey Graham. So my only point is, he wanted it. He was entertained by it when it happened. And the only thing he said after the fact, upon questions from reporters, was everyone thought all my words were really good, really appropriate.
I don't think he's got much of a chance of being reelected unless we let him. And I don't just mean we, the American people. I mean, I don't think the press is going to do it again. I don't think, I mean, the terrible things that Donald Trump has done, the only way he was able to do what he was able to do in 2016 is he had years of being mainstreamed. He had a popular TV show. He had Twitter. He's not going to have those things. The next 3.5 years, he's going to spend fighting lawsuits, right? He's going to be associated with a terrorist attack that didn't just hit the Capitol, but I suspect we will have other attacks over the next couple of years. I don't think Donald Trump is a threat to run again. I think Donald Trump is a threat to activate and incite other violence across the country. And I think what's really sort of important as far as the future, thinking about the future, is not just what Trump will do, but how the American people and how the Democratic Party chooses to look at the Republicans from now on. If I'm Jamie Harrison, Jamie, if you're watching right now, if I'm Jamie Harrison, I'm looking at every single senator right now and saying, who's running in 2022? Who's running in Congress in 2022? I'm trying to get rid of them. If there's a Capitol Hill police officer who can retire and go home to his hometown in Missouri right now, give him $1 million to run against Josh Hawley as a Republican. Like, that's what the Democrats should be thinking about in the future, because we may know what's going to happen in this impeachment trial. But unless they demonstrate that the Republican Party is no longer a party of ideas, that tomorrow all they're going to do, they're going to give the Chewbacca defense, the Shaggy, it wasn't Trump defense, any crazy defense they can come up with. We know it's going to be garbage. But unless the Democratic Party exercises its power to try and knock these people out next year, then they will be opening up the door for a smarter, more sophisticated version of Trump in 2024.
And we see that happening before our very eyes. John Heilman, Donna Edwards, Jason Johnson, Tim Miller, thank you all so much for spending some time with me today.